Hello substreamers and welcome back to Substream News. I've been trying to make this video for 3 days now, but every time I try it starts raining and I have a feeling deep in my heart that it's gonna start raining soon. So let's get through this efficiently. So okay, my curious minds, gather round and let's begin. Today's video we're going to be talking about something that sounds a bit like it comes straight out of a sci-fi movie, but I can guarantee it's very real and it's very much happening right now. Gene editing in babies. So you may have heard of CRISPR, C-R-I-S-P-R. You may even have heard of that crazy doctor in China who got in a bit of hot water a few years ago for gene editing some babies, even though he had the parents' permission. But what does it really mean to edit the genes of a human before they've even taken their first breath? And probably more importantly to this video, is it a good idea? I'm just gonna, bit of pretext, no, it's not a good idea. I mean, ethically speaking. Scientifically speaking, there may be a different argument. So for this video, we're going to explore why, I guess from some different perspectives, gene editing in babies is something we should approach with extreme caution, if not outright concern, or even the feeling of being appalled, I suppose. I'm going to go through the science, the risks, the ethics, what society thinks, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So grab a comfy seat and let's jump in. So you might be thinking, gene editing? What, you mean like literally editing people's DNA? Yes, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And the most famous tool for doing such is called CRISPR-Cas9. You can think of it, I suppose, or they've referenced it as like a molecular pair of scissors snipping away at different pieces of our DNA, finding pieces of our DNA and cutting them out, or putting something in, right? These magical molecular scissors. Now, it's super powerful and it holds almost infinite potential, and mainly it's kind of aimed at curing diseases, things that are not very treatable, but there's more to it than that. There is an argument that we could gene edit adults, but where we're at with this video is gene editing in babies, which is the bigger controversy, is the more ethical issue at hand, and that's where things get a little bit scary, because when you edit the genes in an embryo, you're either doing it in a test tube or in a live person, and what you're not only giving them some edited genes, you're giving them something that's heritable. If you get that wrong, that can have serious implications. What that means is you could give somebody a change to their DNA that they pass on to their children, and their children, and their children, and their children, and for future generations indefinitely until the human race eventually wipes itself out. So we're not really just fixing one person when we talk about gene editing in babies. We're talking about generational changes, the entire gene pool changing in a way that's playing God, right? And that is a huge responsibility. It is a big deal to play God with these molecular scissors. But why? Why are people so opposed? Let me put it another way. This is an unpredictable science. It's not a simple fix. So let's talk about the science itself. CRISPR, this tool that I've talked about, these molecular scissors, they're not perfect. They don't work exactly as intended. We're talking about super complex biological systems. These molecular scissors, to continue using this metaphor, they can go wrong. And when they do go wrong, they create something called off-target effects. Now, even if they are super precise, they're not 100% precise. Sometimes they could snip in the wrong place, and that creates unintended changes to the embryo, unintended changes to the DNA, and unpredictable, potentially harmful things that could result in dire consequences for the person involved and for all of their future generations. And there's a really cute cat over here. Psst, 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 psst. No. The second concern: mosaicism. What a wonderful word. This is when not all the cells in the embryo take on or get edited in the way that they are intended to. So some of your genes or DNA may have the edited gene and some may not. Now, if a baby is born mosaic, it means that different parts of their body could have different genetic makeups, and that is completely bizarre, and that would make it really hard to predict the outcome of a gene edit, and it would lead to kind of partial consequences or partial effectiveness and probably unforeseen health issues, and that again is a huge ethical dilemma. Now, I love to come record in this park, and I'm usually getting absolutely abused by mosquitoes and flies, but today I don't know why they're leaving me alone. So I have a nice peaceful moment here with you guys to ask you to please subscribe to Substream if you're not already. It means a great deal to us. We're always trying to up our numbers. We are doing the best we can here, and with your support we can do even better and do even more. So yeah, if you're not yet subscribed, please do. And if you're not yet convinced, let's keep going with the video, and perhaps by the end you will be. Okay, so we have off-target effects and we have mosaicism. We have another one here. It's called the slippery slope, and this argument basically states that right now we're only talking about preventing diseases or protecting people from diseases. As we'll get on to, there's a way to edit DNA to prevent the contraction of HIV. You could also edit genes to stop things like Huntington's disease or cystic fibrosis and other awful inflictions. Now that sounds noble. That's a wonderful thing. That's a great application for the technology. But would it really end there? And that, my friends, is the slippery slope argument. It's saying, where do you draw the line? Where is ethical and where is unethical? So if you edit out the gene for one severe illness, what about a predisposition to another, to cancer? What about dyslexia? What about traits that are considered less desirable, like being short, or different certain physical appearances like having a big nose? This may sound silly, but that is the slippery slope argument, and I kind of agree with that. There has to be a line, and for many the line is zero tolerance to gene editing. Now for others, we really should pursue this technology in a noble way, but very hard to control. Because, substreamers, what happens if you don't control it? What happens if you lose control and people have, let's say, free will to use gene editing in any way they like? What would that lead to? I tell you what that will lead to. Designer babies. Wow. Yes, so in this future, imagine, where gene editing can just be done willy-nilly, and they're really good at it. Basically, parents would be choosing to enhance their babies with things like being better at sports, being taller, being more intelligent, having certain color of eyes. Now, I found some data. There was a 2017 study. They interviewed Americans, and they found 95% of people interviewed opposed gene editing for this reason. They were really uncomfortable with the idea of designer babies and human editing. And so consumer choice probably will never reach gene editing, but I still wanted to mention it in this video, because the flip side of designing people for positive things, positive traits, is the flip side. Designing to kind of get rid of people, and you may already know the word for that. It's eugenics. Back in the 20th century, eugenics was a pretty big debate. There was this idea that we could selectively improve humans for desirable traits and eliminate the undesirable ones. And gene editing in babies raises this topic all over again, because it could achieve that. And so it does risk becoming a new form of eugenics, and that would be terrible. We don't want that to happen, because what if society decides what are good traits and what are bad traits? What happens then? That would marginalize or effectively eliminate certain types of people. Now, some of you watching might think, oh, that's really wonderful, because I hate XYZ race or type of people or whatever. But that's a really weak argument, and you should have a bigger heart. And if you do have a bigger heart, you're very welcome to continue following Substream. Now, one gene editing debate came actually, interestingly, from the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, that's ASAN, they basically said that gene editing is a threat to autistic people. And also the National Council on Disability said that gene editing is a threat to disabled people. If you target certain genes because they are associated with a disability, it sends out a really dark message that people with those disabilities are somehow less than or shouldn't exist. And that's pretty awful. The value of humanity is in its diversity, right? You might not like to hear that, you might not agree with that, but that is how the genome works, right? The human genome is made stronger by how diverse it is. He Jiankui, he was a Chinese scientist, Dr. He Jiankui made the news big time a few years ago because he gene edited a couple of babies called Lulu and Nana to make them resistant to HIV. Now, this wasn't a research experiment. He just did it. It was a clinical application of gene editing, and it was done in secret at the parents' request. Very questionable consent, but the international scientific community was outraged. They condemned him, and it didn't work out very well for him because it's completely reckless and unethical. Now, why? Think about it. Think deeply about it. What if it went wrong? The risks are massive, immense, and actually when they check the genes of these babies after, the editing was incomplete in at least one of the babies, and instead of the desired HIV resistance, they ended up with some weird mutations that they shouldn't have. And more than that, a lot of people live healthy lives with HIV because the medicine, the advancements in that particular disease have come along so far that even if you have HIV nowadays, it's not the biggest problem in the world. That's the bad side. On the good side, well, the benefits were minimal. Okay, there are already safe ways to prevent HIV, and they just didn't warrant doing such a risky procedure to try and help these babies. Very bizarre. Now, He Jiankui, he did violate international scientific standards and regulations and everything, and yeah, he went to jail. That's the good news, guys. He's safe. He's safely away in jail, and so you're safe from his gene editing. He got 3 years in prison, so he's probably not in jail now, but he did go to jail. He was fined for medical practice, and I believe he lost his license. So he's no longer doctor. He's just, I suppose, seen by a lot of people as a bit of a madman for what he did. And these Lulu and Nana, I believe, are fake names. We don't really know what became of them. It's been shrouded in secrecy. Anyway, let's move on to the next part. So you kind of getting a picture of how I feel about this topic, but what does the general public kind of think about this topic? Well, I found a pretty interesting research from Pew Research Center, which, if you don't know it, is one of the best in the world. They do some of the most interesting research projects in the world, and the flies are starting to get me now. They found that Americans are kind of divided, actually, on this topic, more than you'd think. If it were a case of reducing a baby's chance of having a serious disease, 30% of Americans would be in favor of gene editing, 30% would be completely against it, and 39% were actually unsure. So when it comes to the societal implications, it's not as straightforward as you think. Now, this same research also found that 73% of Americans are concerned that parents would feel pressured to gene edit their babies. So we're talking about the baby's in the embryo. The doctor says to the parents, look, your baby is likely to have this illness, but we can gene edit it. That seems pretty likely to me. Only 73% of Americans agree. I would say almost definitely that would happen. Now, 55% are worried that gene editing would lead to increased inequality between people who could afford it and people who can't. That again goes back to the commercial side of things, and I think that's a big enough ethic reason not to pursue it, commercially at least. If it could be done, it should be done when it needs to be done without a cost to the parents, right? Just to save a life if it would make a huge difference. Anyway, 84% believe that gene editing would be used in immoral ways or unacceptable ways. I think that's incredible. That could be a whole video of its own. 68% believe that it would go too far in eliminating natural human differences, and I kind of agree with that. Whether it's eugenics or getting rid of undesirable traits, in just a few generations we might have no short people, we might have no people with green eyes, or we might have an abundance of something. It's those societal implications that I think are huge. Actually, let me continue on the society discussion of this and kind of go into the regulations for a few different societies. Frankly, it's a bit of a patchwork. Many countries do already have legislation, like the US, most of Europe, the UK, Canada, Australia. They say that clinical germline gene editing is forbidden, right? Or strongly prohibited. So at the moment, yeah, it's not really a normal thing. So that's good, because there are some troublesome divergences between national laws and the potential for medical tourism. It's not that hard to imagine that if the first world banned gene editing completely, some country somewhere would capitalize on that and make it commercially available. So people with money would pretty much travel to these countries just to violate international human rights laws, find some loopholes, and regulate their embryos in the way they would like to have some tall babies unethically. Totally bizarre, but that is a potential reality we're looking at, guys. Just imagine a future where the rich could upgrade their children, right? You're talking about giving them massive advantages in their life, academically, physically, cognitively, and create this system of designer babies. And that, I just want to I want to emphasize how huge an issue that is, because it creates a new class system. It creates almost superhumans with genetic privileges that would have a massive head start in life, completely unfair. I mean, it's already a massive advantage in life for your parents to have money versus someone who don't, or the genetic lottery of being born in different countries that have more investment in education and welfare and things. But this is one step too far. So I think that is completely a place where we draw the line, because the idea to me of a genetic aristocracy is so foul and dystopian that I really hope we never reach that point, because that kind of, I'd say it erodes the level playing field. It erodes kind of what it is to be human, the fundamental idea that being human, we're all equal, right? Religious people might say we're all made in God's image, right? We should all have a fair shot, right? But that is such a sci-fi way to completely unbalance the human experience. It started raining for a minute there, and now it's stopped, and I think that's a good time, before it starts up again, to conclude this video. For me, you probably gather by now, the idea of gene editing babies is technologically fascinating, but it just comes with too many dilemmas and ethical challenges, and it's so unpredictable and risky, and these off-target issues and mosaicism and designer babies is all too much. It's not clean tech. It's not good, and I know there are some good applications for this, and if they can be very precise, very careful with how they use it, then it could be a good thing. But I agree that the likelihood that this would lead down an immoral avenue is far too high, because we've got He Jiankui is one of the first scientists who can actually do it, and so he does it in secret on babies and ends up in jail and sets the technology back several years. So I'm not anti-science, you know me, I'm pro-science, pro-tech, but it's about being responsible, and I think gene editing now as it stands is irresponsible, and that's my final opinion. So guys, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this video, I encourage you to please go and subscribe, like, comment, turn on the bell, notification bell if you really want to, thank you for watching. Thanks, I appreciate your time. Most of all, I really want to know your comments on this, because it is such a polarizing and divisive topic, and I may have completely overlooked something, and that is where you can come in with a very valuable comment and help me out. So please help out all the other substreamers too with your insight. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.